So tell me about this helmet. I know I think when you guys were down there was suddenly when Alpinestars marketing cut loose, and I saw R7 helmets all over the place.
I mean, people have been excited about this helmet for a long time. Like, there's the SuperTech R10. You own one.
Mhm.
It is now the top selling, top shelf, high end helmet in the world. If you're buying a top shelf helmet, more people are buying the SuperTech R10, and it's their very first foray into helmets. And if you go back and again listen to the podcast with Danielle, she explains how Alpinestars is building their helmets. They have their own test facility. They have their own wind tunnel testing. So they just launched a mid-tier helmet. I believe the price on it is $678.
Okay.
There were some not embargo, but like some tariff issues. So we mostly only got the plain colors, but they had a full array of all the paint jobs there with all the different visors. It uses the same visor as the SuperTech R10, which I think is really cool. It uses a lot of the same technology from the SuperTech R10, but instead of it being a full carbon fiber shell with like the $1,400 price point, it uses a carbon composite fiberglass and Aramid shell. Aramid is Kevlar, carbon fiberglass in a mesh that's only slightly heavier than the carbon fiber, but significantly cheaper. And to a certain extent, it's a little bit softer, but for the average street rider, I think that's a benefit. That's not a...
I was just saying, I wouldn't take that as a negative.
No, I would take it as a plus, not a minus in that case. I will say, like, I'll be working on the whole big review video of it right now. I am supremely impressed. I'm just going to come out and say it. I think it's the best mid-tier helmet out there. It performs on par with my very, very extremely expensive top shelf track helmet that I've been wearing for years at basically half the price. It also has a comm system built into it so that you don't have a thing hanging off it. It's all integrated into the helmet, paired up with my camera. You'll be able to hear me talking just through the comm system built into the it's an added price on top of it, but I love how it's built into it. And lots of Aero design went into it. The engineers from Italy were there. I got to talk to them about how the Aero is designed, the laminar flow. There's things on it that you're like, oh, that looks neat. And they're like, yeah, it looks neat, but we tried it here, we tried it here, we did it in the wind tunnel, we found here works a little better than here. We put these turbulators on the top of the visor to prevent the little spiraling as the wind comes across a lot of thought went into this helmet, and it shows.
It's a good looking helmet. I like my R10 quite a bit. There's some cool features on it. The way the tail of the helmet is, it kind of wraps toward the back and then it's sort of blunted on the backside. It reminds me of, I don't know if they're still doing it even, but Trek bicycles. They, for the longest time, did this thing that they called a Kamm-tail, Kamm, I believe. And it has that means something. I can't remember what Kamm-tail means. But effectively, the idea was, it's funny, we've been talking about aerodynamics like the last 3 episodes.
Right. It's a big part of our world now. It's where a lot of attention is going.
Yeah, and we talked about the idea that a sort of a teardrop shape is ideal for reducing drag and so forth. What Trek's engineering showed was if you make the leading edge of the profile, so they were doing it on tubes on the bicycle frames, but if you can make the leading edge behave like the front end of a teardrop, and the back end sort of wraps toward it, but then gets blunted off. It's sort of chopped off. They find that at a certain speed with other behaviors going on, the air will sort of function like a teardrop, even though it's sort of chopped off on the backside. And that's kind of what the helmet reminds me of, is you've got these sort of channels for the air to come to the back. And rather than having like a full long sort of cone shape all the way, behind you,
like those old Aero bicycling.
Yeah, it reminds me of like the old time trial helmets from Tour de France and stuff. But they sort of blunt it, and I'm sure that there's something going on there. It's also, I noticed the exhaust exits right into that flow. Again, kind of back to what we talked about with Aprilia potentially. That's maybe their design going on with their bike right now, is to try to like have that air that's flowing into that what should be a low pressure kind of fill in the pressure and help the air pass around it more smoothly. So good looking helmet for sure though. I like it overall.
Talking to the engineers, like all the little flutes in the helmets, they all said they served a purpose. I think they look cool. There's 2 little wings on the side of the helmet. I think they're very similar to the wings that are on the SuperTech R. And I asked the Italians, and like they didn't speak as much English, but they spoke more English than I spoke Italian. And they're like winglets, right? The little winglets. And one thing I noticed, they were talking about the laminar flow and how it prevents the turbulence and blah, blah. Since Willow Springs now runs backwards, you come off of if you're familiar with the track at all, a chunk of the track is on the skid pad. And that used to be basically the last turn on the track, and now it's basically where you start. So you come out of that through a couple turns and down this back straightaway through a couple kinks into this big banked bowl. And you're going into this turn, even on the smaller bikes, I was well over 100 miles an hour. And you're going into this bank turn, and you have to look a full 180 degrees to see the exit to try to figure out where on earth you're going to apex and how this turn's going to lead. And you're going in fast. And I noticed almost immediately going in at super, super high speed with my head fully cranked to the side, there was virtually no turbulence or drag on your helmet. You know, like sometimes you check your blind spot and the wind hits the side of your helmet and you get that snap. Yeah. There was nothing. And that's when I went and started talking to the engineers. I'm like, hey, this is cool. Is it just unique to here? And they're like, no. Like all these things are built to mitigate that. And they explained how it worked and like how it closed the air. And I didn't understand it as well as I should have because it was, English is a second language. But he said, where you're really going to notice it, and I went and tested it the next day, is when you're behind like a big truck or a semi, and you got that turbulence coming off the back of the trailer. We were talking about this a couple podcasts ago. He said, you'll notice that normally on a normal helmet, your head's bobbling back around and forth, like your head's getting batted like a cat playing with a yarn ball. Like you can't control it. With this helmet, and they said because of those two little wings, it smooths the air as it comes across the back of your helmet, and you'll be behind a semi-truck, and it's none. There's virtually no buffeting, which is, it's crazy. I've never experienced that before.
Well, it's interesting. So now you've got one of these helmets. So presumably you'll be able to ride with this thing a bit more and maybe get some content and stuff using it with some of your other trips. So maybe we'll get to see it a little bit more in the future.
Yeah, I guarantee. I mean, had they I not received one for doing the whole test, I mean, it's part of why they gave me one, so I can tell you guys about it. I would 100% spend my own money on this helmet, and it will be worn a lot. It's probably one of the quietest helmets I've ever worn as well. When we finished up with Alpinestars, I did a collaboration with Spite's Corner where we went and test rode the Verge electric motorcycle. And it's the only time I think I've ever done this on purpose. I didn't wear earplugs.
It's electric.
It's electric, and the helmet is so quiet.
Yeah.
Right? Like so many times, like if you're on a motorcycle, even if it's not exhaust noise, the wind noise is so loud inside the helmet. This helmet is bonkers quiet. And I think it's because of the aerodynamics is, you mentioned it in the last podcast that you find aerodynamics compelling because there's real world benefits to us, not necessarily for how fast we can get down the straightaway or load on the front tires, blah, blah, like how MotoGP is using it. But this for me was this real tangible thing where you could see like, wow, aerodynamics can make a significant improvement to the quality of life in something as simple as a helmet.
Yep. Yeah, it's funny because at normal speeds, we think that there's nothing around us. No, there's a lot around us. Actually, you're having to push through all this air all the time. You're just so used to it at normal speeds, it's fine. But as you go faster, the drag that you're experiencing, it's velocity squared, right? The faster you go, it isn't just 200 to 100 isn't twice as much drag. It's 4 times as much drag, if not.
Wow.
Right? It starts ramping up the faster and faster you go. So if you think about, we're all built, we joked about this, we're all built to go 20 miles an hour. That's how we're built. And now we all function at 80 miles an hour on a regular basis, if not faster, on the freeway and wherever else. The amount of drag that's causing for your car or for your motorcycle or for your helmet as you pass through it, it is a massive, massive force that you're having to deal with. So yeah, I'm excited about this, and we're getting more and more access to more and more tools to do CFD, so Computational Fluid Dynamics, which is the way that we would simulate how that fluid moves around us. Right. So that stuff's becoming much more accessible and attainable, and it's getting much better.
Right.
In fact, I've gotten to see a couple new tools that are out right now fairly recently that are everyone's favorite buzzword right now. They use AI, their predictive analysis. So it understands a history of results that it's seen from tests. And it goes, okay, I'm pretty sure I understand how air works. I'm going to apply it to this, and it can solve these things. What problems that would used to take hours or days for the computer to crunch and solve the problem now can be done in minutes or seconds even. So we're going to see kind of a rapid advancement in engineering and design with these things. I'm excited about it. I think we're going to see big improvements in it soon.
Right. Like even like looking at the shapes on the helmet, you know, like we've got so accustomed to the AGV helmets. You and I wear the AGV with the really pointy chin.
Yep.
Right. Which it looks cool. Like aesthetically, it looks really neat.
Batman.
When you look at the front of this helmet, it's kind of this rounded. It's almost kind of silly looking at the front, and the vents are in really weird places. And when I talk to them about it, they're like, yeah, we put the vents here at this shape for this reason to cause this effect. Like we want the wind to come into this vent and blow across the inside of the visor, so we had to put it here. Like you wouldn't have been able to do that if you were like making clay models of helmets and going out and trying it.
Yep. Yeah. And some of this stuff, it's getting so intricate and detailed now because so I'll give an example for a helmet, right? Not only do I have to think about that helmet passing through the air, I have to think about the head inside the helmet. You're exhaling through your nose or your mouth potentially. How does that air behave with the air that I'm trying to push through the helmet for the venting? And that's the stuff now that is possible to simulate, whereas before we really couldn't.
Right.
So,
which is super cool. This helmet also, like the SuperTech R10 has the same thing. They call it a head. It's like a MIPS system on the top of the head, so you can adjust it. We were there with the engineers, so of course they're walking us through setting up our helmet for our heads. And all of us have back to we're all shaped differently, right? Like how big is your like how high is your forehead? Ideally, we all want our eyes in the center of the eye port of the visor. And this allowed it. So they took my helmet and they lowered, they raised the front of the helmet and lowered backwards. They lowered the front of the helmet and raised the back of the helmet for my head. And so put the helmet in kind of this absolutely perfect position on my head. And then you get the MIPS built into it.
Yep.
And it was really cool to see how, there's safety elements that I'm going to go into more in the detail. There's I think they had 8 different EPS composite components built in there to have it fit your head perfectly. And then the other interesting thing is the orange triangle on the side that some of the people online are like, it looks like a Fisher-Price thing. No, this is really interesting. It's a non-Newtonian material, the gooey stuff that gets softer. Apparently, they found with other helmet testing that a lot of collarbone breaks were actually coming from the thing on your helmet, the rim of the helmet hitting your collarbone. And so let's see if we can fix it. They changed the shape of the bottom of the shell and put that padding so that when you do get that kind of side hit, you're not taking that sharp edge of the corner of the shell and jamming it into you're taking that soft, gooey, pliable orange material and putting it into your collarbone. So hopefully maybe saving some collarbones. Man, who doesn't love that attention to safety, comfort, all these things?
Well, and as a guy with a plated collarbone, I would like to not have a plated collarbone.
I've been lucky. I've managed to make it all these years without breaking a collarbone. Someone asked me once years ago, they're like, I want to, how should I crash? And I jokingly said, well, you should crash like the pros and land on your collarbone. Because, but it was, you shouldn't practice crashing, by the way. But it was just kind of like, it's such a common injury with what we do. So anything that kind of mitigates that, whether it be their plasma, I think they call it plasma. The bright orange color stuff, which I think it looks good, if nothing else. Mm-hmm. But to know that it has a safety factor built into it is pretty exciting to me.